right, let's go live to the CBD4U.net hotline. That's right, you don't have to live in pain anymore. Vapes, gummies, salves, CBD capsules with melatonin to help you sleep better. Let CBD help you regain normalcy in life. CBD4U.net. That's CBDFORYOU.net. All right, we are joined by WOW Superhero Selina Majors. She's a 33-year vet in the wrestling industry. She's wrestled for GLOW, WCW, and now Women of Wrestling, and she is live right now on the CBD4U.net hotline. Miss Selina, thank you so much for joining us today, and how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on today.
Hey, it is definitely our pleasure. Let's start off. So you grew up in Georgia. What was the wrestling scene locally like in Georgia when you were growing up?
Oh, my gosh. I grew up in the 70s, and it was Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And, man, it was, for me, it was the greatest thing that ever came along. I was instantly a fan. My dad loved wrestling. He grew up watching wrestling with my grandfather, and so he wanted to be a wrestler. And back in that era, in the 70s, it was really hard to get into wrestling. And so, lucky me, I got to go to the wrestling matches and sit on the front row, and I've lived out my dream. So it's been a great journey for me.
Who was your favorite wrestler?
Oh, my gosh. If I tell you, I like the bad guys, if I'm completely honest. I know, isn't that crazy? I was this little tomboy girl, and I liked the bad guys. And to be honest, Ole Anderson and the Anderson brothers, they were the meanest and the baddest, and the Four Horsemen, and I loved all the bad guys. And Bambi, I wrestled as Bambi most of my career. I just say my real name now, Selina Majors, but I was Bambi for over 30 years in my wrestling career. And as everybody knows, I was always a good guy, on the good side, a good girl, but I always cheered for the bad guy. So isn't that a crazy world?
No, I get that. My son, I keep telling him, son, we're a face family, but he always pulls for the heels too.
Yes, I know. My dad, I can remember my dad taking me to the matches, and I'm like, my favorite, he's going to win. And my dad assumed it was Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, because that was everybody's favorite in the 70s.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I like Ole Anderson. And my dad was like, you're going to get us killed, because we would go down to the Omni in Atlanta. And, back in that era, people were really get serious about it, and so when this little 10-year-old girl was rooting for the bad guys, it was different. But we have something in WOW for everybody, and that's one thing I like about it. I joke with David that we're like Baskin Robbins, 31 flavors. We've got everything from good guys to bad guys and everything in between. And I know it's a slogan, good guy, bad guy. We're all girls. We're in all women's wrestling, but we got the heroes and the villains, and we like to have fun, and that's what our show is all about. It's a great entertainment. It's athletic competition, but we also put a lot of fun for families in it, because I grew up watching wrestling, and I want it to be a fun family thing for everybody to come out and watch.
That's right. We're talking with Selina Majors. Now, you name-dropped David. Now, you've been working with David for a while. You had your ring debut in 1986 with a company that David was running. How has that relationship blossomed over the years?
I tell you, when I met David, it's surreal, because it's been over 30 years. But when I first met him, he and I are very similar. As I was the little girl that went to the wrestling matches, he was a little boy that went to the wrestling matches. And we found that our childhood was very similar growing up. His favorite being the Bruiser. I don't know if the Bruiser was a villain or a hero. I don't really know, because he wrestled in a different area. I think maybe he went wrestled a little bit everywhere, all different ways. But David and I felt like we were very similar in our backgrounds and our youth growing up, and our vision that we wanted for wrestling, and for women's wrestling in particular. And at that time in the 80s, and I see you did your homework, so that's impressive to me. Thank you. So I did start in 1986, and I started with David and a group called POW, Powerful Women of Wrestling, and he had just broke away from GLOW, which is more famously known, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, and now because of the Netflix show, it's even more popular than ever. But the reason he parted ways with that company was because he wanted to focus on the athleticism and a more serious side, and not all comedy, and not be taken as a comedy versus a serious wrestling show. And I'm not sure if the world was ready for that yet. And we always kept trying, and I remember meeting him on a bus way up somewhere freezing cold, I don't know, Chicago or Minnesota, and we were talking on the bus about our vision, our dream, how we wish we had one day a platform for the women wrestling. And it's just, I'm blessed. I can't tell you how much. Number one, to be 52 years old and still be a part of a wrestling company like this, and to see women's wrestling evolve like it has from when I got into it, where we were maybe one match on a special occasion. They would even, and I don't want to insult anybody when I use these terms, but they would book a girls match or a midgets match, and it would say that on the poster. And we went from that to now having a 1-hour show of just female women wrestling. And wow, that's amazing to me that I've been able to see it come full circle. And I feel so truly blessed to be part of WOW Women of Wrestling. And I feel thankful for Mark Cuban and Andrew Simon that got us on AXS TV, and Jeannie Buss, who, you know, she owns the Lakers and she helped fund this. And for us to have a platform like this, I'm just so thankful, and I hope everybody gets a chance to tune in Friday night. I think you said it comes on at 8 o'clock in your area time zone, and it follows New Japan Wrestling. So if you're a wrestling fan, you get 2 hours of wrestling, you know, and very different wrestling in both shows.
That's right. 52 years old. You go on with your bad self, girl.
Well, I'm proud of it. I tell you, it's better than the alternative, and I'm still here, and I'm still loving every minute of it. And a big part of my job is getting in the ring with the younger girls and passing the torch and teaching them what I know. And I've had a pleasure of working with some of the most talented, athletic girls that I've ever met. Back in my era, there wasn't that many women wrestlers. You could, you know, count them on two hands, you know, basically. When I was getting booked around the country, there was maybe 20 girls to pick from who your opponent would be. Now there's so many female athletes out there, and we have such a variety of different flavors, as I said earlier. And I've got the pleasure of meeting Tessa Blanchard, who is a third generation. Her dad is Tully Blanchard, who was one of the Four Horsemen who I grew up watching. And so I feel so blessed, and she has really got wrestling in her DNA. She, her slogan is a born legend, and boy, she is. She is so athletic. And, we've got Santana Garrett, who is our champion, who's been around for about 10 years now. She's the ultimate, good guy, if you will. Very colorful. And we've got Jessica Havoc, who is the monster of madness, and she's a big girl, and she can really wrestle. She is, I can just go on and on. We've got so many. We've got over 30 girls in the company, and they're all so great. It's hard to talk about just one or two of them. We've got a girl called the Beast, and she's a homegrown WOW girl that I trained myself at the wrestling school out in Long Beach, California. And she's going to be something that nobody has ever seen before, not since China. If you're a wrestling fan, you know who I'm talking about. Not since China has there been anybody that looks like the Beast.
That's absolutely amazing. And I tell you what, I can attest to that, because being in radio, you get a few perks sometimes, and they send us some clips. And you are absolutely right. The Beast is the Beast. Absolutely amazing what she can do in the ring. And just the clips that I've seen, you guys are putting on a fantastic program, and AXS TV is where it's going to be at right after New Japan Wrestling. Now, to listen to the entire interview with Selina Majors, check out the description below.